you.
Emmanuel, I'd like to start with you. You heard what the farmers from the Western Belt said about maize, and them wanting the price of maize being raised from 3,000 shillings to 3,400 shillings. What do you think about that? Do you think that's one of the best ways to solve the crisis in the country?
First of all, Zainab, thank you for having us. It's very important for us to mainstream these conversations. So it's even prudent to be having them every day because people are eating every day. Yes, what I'm picking also from farmers is that they're complaining because no one is looking at them. So people are assuming that there's no maize coming from Bungoma, from Kakamega, from Vihiga. So everyone is focusing on the North Rift. And that is where these farmers are asking, you know, why are we not getting access to market? Why is no one talking about our prices? And yes, and this is the model that large-scale industrial agriculture brings to us, you know. So we create hybrids and then we start to imagine that, you know, hybrids are the only crops that matter. So if you're not in the North Rift, you're not doing maize, for example. So no one is paying attention to what these farmers are doing. They're doing small-scale production of maize using some local varieties, sometimes 3-month maize varieties that do very well even with harsh weather conditions. But you see, again, no one is keeping an eye to look at what these farmers need and how to also help them to sustain that kind of production. Yes.
But do you think the price should move to 3,400?
The question of price is really determined by market. The global price for maize is around 1,400 shillings to about 1,600 shillings. So if someone is imagining that you can use all the fertilizer you want, you can use all the high-cost inputs you want, and then you get the price you want, because that's complex. It's a very complex issue. Yes.
Dr. Jama, early this week, the IGAD released a report that looked at the state of food insecurity within the IGAD region. And your report said that 24% of the population in the IGAD is severely food insecure, and that is about 27 million people.
Yes.
Comparing with the numbers last year it was about 20 million. This year it's 27 million. That means there's an increase in the number of people who are food insecure within the region. Where do you think the problem is? Why are we always here every year?
Thank you, Zainab, and thanks for having me. The issue of food security is very complex. I hear what the farmers were saying. There are so many things that impact on food security, and in our region, you are aware that some of the key drivers, of the main ones, are climate related. There's drought that is coming more frequently than before. We have also issue of conflict in some countries, and it's not even availability of food, it's access to food. You also have the issue of economic shocks. In some countries in our region, the prices of food has increased so much, and the money, the currencies have devaluated so much that people getting ready to get ready for these things. It's not lack of preparedness, it's not lack of, but these are things that are natural.
You think the region is adequately prepared?
The region has been trying as much as humanly possible to get prepared, and I'll talk about it, but there's always, you remember in 2010, 2011, there was a drought in the region, and only in Somalia, about 250 people died because of lack of food. And that is a country where statistics and numbers are, so I'm sure there is even an underestimation. That is when our heads of states, in fact hosted by former President Kibaki, met here and say that this issue of food security, drought, famine, these are not not only national, but it's regional. We have to, and they set up a mechanism to manage this strategy to work on these priorities led by member countries, and IGAD picking on the regional aspects of this. So and frankly, Kenya is a model in this region.
A model?
Yes.
We have 2.6 million people who are food
insecure. I know,
insecure.
but there could have been, it could have been worse.
That number is expected to hit 3 million by the end of September.
I agree. That's what the analysis says. But in terms of institutional arrangements, you have the National Drought Management Agency. You have a 5-year plan, and unlike any other countries, Kenya has taken that 5-year plan and mainstreamed it into their national medium-term development plan, have funded it as much as possible, and have put the gaps for development partners and others to
So you think Kenya is on the right track towards solving the food security
I honestly
problem?
believe Kenya is on the right track, and frankly is a champion for us in the region on the management aspect.
Emmanuel, do you agree?
Yes, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So yeah, so it's what he sees. But I agree. You see, when you look at the documents and you look at what is out there, and you look at the statements all over about the big for us trying to solve the problem of food insecurity, it would be easy to imagine that we are making steps in the right direction, but we are actually could be making steps in the very wrong direction. Because now we are looking at a very big disconnect between food security and food safety, food availability and food safety, and we are trading on a very delicate path, actually, because we are not able to have the two, at the same time. So now
food security and food availability.
Yes, and food safety. Yeah, and the gap is widening. So when you talk about, in fact, when you talk about food security. Recently, the recent FAO report on state of the world food nutrition and security, which was also done in collaboration with the World Health Organization for the first time. They had that collaboration. They redefined actually food insecurity, and they said it's beyond hunger. There is this food insecurity experience scale that they have now introduced in measuring this. And they're saying it's beyond hunger, because hunger is basically the physical discomfort, when you lack dietary energy. And it's beyond that. If that is what we are using, in fact, to measure and say we have 2.6 million Kenyans who are hungry, then we don't know how many Kenyans are actually food insecure.
Yes.
So the situation is worse, it's getting worse. There is need to rethink solution orientation, the model that we have put in place to try and encourage ourselves that we are solving this problem, because we are not. You see even all the programs that the counties are running, like what Kakamega County is doing, telling farmers they're going to give them subsidies, they're going to give them free fertilizer to grow their sugarcane. That is not the spirit.
That's not a solution.
That is not food sovereignty. What if the subsidies are not there the next year? The farmers will not be able to grow sugarcane because they were hooked on subsidies.
Yes.
That is what has happened with maize in the North Rift now. So we are making steps. Steps are there, but they are not in the right direction. We haven't had a conversation on which way the Kenyan food system should take.
You raised a point there about how to know exactly how many people are hungry. And that's partly what you do at the IGAD, to measure this, how people are hungry. If you look at last week, the National Drought Management Authority released the numbers for Kenya, and they said we have 2.6 million people who are at IPC phase 3, 1.6 million more than the numbers that were recorded earlier in February. And then it further says the counties of Turkana, Mandera, Baringo, Wajir, Garissa, Marsabit, Tana River are the ones that are most affected. And this number is expected to hit 3 million by September. The IGAD report, on the other hand, says 27 million people in the region. Sudan has 8-point-something million. Somalia has 5-point-something million. Ethiopia, several million people. Kenya is not even anywhere on that list, because with our 2.6 million, we have fewer compared to the other IGAD countries. How do you know? How do you measure exactly how many people need food aid?
There is, it's true, Kenya, for the most part, unlike many other countries, where there is intercommunal conflict, where there are civil wars, where it's mainly due to climate issues. As you may know, Zainab, this rainy season, the rains came late,
yes.
so people were not able to plant on time. And I think that's one of the main problems in terms of production. The rains in the previous seasons were also below average. And so we have this carryover vulnerabilities from last year to this year. The rains in the coming season, October, November, December is expected to be even to be better for the most part. But you have this vulnerability carry over from previous years. So the issue of measurement, that is one of the things that this report and the communities that work on humanitarian issues have agreed on a system called integrated phase classification, and it has numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the extreme. 1 and 2 maybe need a little bit of development sort of oriented. 3 is when people need, it goes beyond the people to capacity to feed them. So this the reason why now we are saying Kenya has 2.6 million, Somalia has 2.2 million, Sudan has, is because of this standard system where we were all adapted, we can compare the numbers between.
Does that system physically count people? The question is, how do you determine exactly how many people?
Yeah, this is first of all is led by member states. Each country has this a working group, and they look into so many issues that affect food security. As you can imagine, it's not possible to go and count everybody, but because they look into studies and availability, rainfall, economics, all of those things, and they take samples in the areas where so, and then not only the country itself, but all the other partners who are working on food security issues. So this is a consensus is built at national level, and then this is accepted by the member countries, and that's when it comes to becomes part of the global regional numbers that we use. So you can never be 100%, but it's a system now. It's globally used, not only our region, not only Kenya, not the IGAD, but it's globally reached. So the report we have builds on the global report. There's a global report and there's a regional report, and they are all using the same system.
Emmanuel, do you think we are running out of food? Because this drought situation happens to us every single year. Every single year we have at least 1 million people who are in need of food aid. And every single year the government puts in place interventions or tries to put in place interventions to address this crisis. This year the Ministry of Devolution says 5 billion shillings has been set aside to address drought emergencies. And already relief food, the CS has already flagged off some consignments of relief food. Every single year, it's the same thing, every single year. Do you think we're running out of food?
It's a very, it's a very tricky question for me, because we have been here with this, we have been having these conversations with you even before. So it has been the year before, last year, and again this year, the same story happening again and again. And it's time we ask ourselves, what is really the problem? The current maize situation, for example, when people are talking about there is a deficit, a projected 25% deficit in maize supply in the market, where you have one ministry saying there's enough maize, another ministry saying there is no maize. Within the same ministry, the NCPB guys are saying, guys, we have maize. The minister says there's no maize. It's very difficult to understand, what is really happening. Because there is no accountability. There is no system to say, for example, this is how much we have in supply. And again, one thing that we always want to make very clear, food security is not a production problem. It's an access problem. Yes, and for us to be able to...
So you think we have enough food within our borders?
For us to be able to enhance, we could get food from our neighbors because we have that ability. That's why we have neighbors. That's why we collaborate, you know, even with regionally, because we can get maize from Uganda, you know. But the problem is, will the people be able to access that maize? If we import maize from Uganda today, will people be able to access it? Yes, you would know, for example, that a very big percentage, you know, a significant percentage of the maize produced in Kenya is not actually sold. It is shared. So people come from Nairobi, they go to the village, they put some maize in a boot and come with it. That is how they access. Yes, that is how they access maize. Yes, the people who are coming from the eastern region and are working in Nairobi, when they want to have green grams, they don't buy it. They go to their homes, they take something that is lacking there, they take sugar or something else, and then they get maize, they get the green grams in exchange. You know, if you want beans, that's how around 30% of the grains are shared like that in the country. And so when we rush and say, okay, so we have a deficit of maize, so let's go and import maize. When you import that maize, are you going to share it through the system that the people have developed? Are you going to put it? Are you going to put the maize from Mexico in Kakamega, for example, and say, guys who come from Kakamega, now you can go home and get maize from your moms because we have given them some maize from Mexico. Because how do people want to access their food? People don't want to be given food aid. No one wants to be given food aid. How can we wait until that time when people are actually, about to die? You know, people are struggling. People are, looking miserable, and then we say, okay, now we emergency food aid. Don't we have systems to ensure that we get as many people out of that situation as possible through the right channels? It could be employment, it could be creation of opportunities, it could be a better distribution of resources, so that everyone is able to feed themselves with dignity. For us, as long as we are still running around with bags of maize, we still have a long way to go. That is not how we enjoy the right to food.
Dr. Jama, we're not planning for these situations. Why are we always here every single year?
Very good question. I think the issue of, first of all, it's like in Europe or some other places where they have this cold weather. You cannot do away with the weather, but they prepare for it. You put the investment on clothing and things like that. I think what we need is, and it's happening in the region, is closer coordination of humanitarian resilience and development issues. In fact, there are people who are saying the $1 you spend on development will save you so many dollars on humanitarian issues.
Yes, $3. It will save you $3.
Absolutely. And then the issue of the timing of the humanitarian issues. If there is a need for, if we are going into the rainy season and you all drop so many bags, it may go to an extent where the buying maize from the town as a result of that may be less than the cost of producing that maize yourself. So really a closer coordination between humanitarian resilience development. We need, my colleague mentioned that people give to each other. These are the coping mechanisms. I remember in some of the rural, I grew up in rural areas, where if somebody loses all his animals, then the community collects some and helps him on. These are the traditional coping strategies we really need to strengthen.
Traditional coping mechanisms.
Traditional coping mechanism. But the issue of Zainab, I had this food security issues. I think aiming for zero, nobody needing food, that is a bit...
You think it's impossible?
I think it's not impossible. In fact, that's why you have seen in sustainable development issue, zero hunger, all kinds of... That should be our target. Our target should be, our vision should be, there should be no hunger. But at least manageable within our own system, as much as humanly possible.
Now, as we just from this conversation just slightly. We have been following this story of the Mau and the evictions going on in the Mau and the efforts the government is making to rehabilitate the Mau. And we have Zainab Ismail on the phone, who is in a helicopter actually, just mapping out the situation in the Mau currently. And now she gives us an update. I think those are the pictures you see on your screen of the green forest. Oh wow, it looks nice. The green looks nice. Those are patches of the Mau forest. And Zainab Ismail now. Zainab, can you tell us a bit of what have you been able to establish right now? We seem to have lost that link, but we will go back to her when we have link again. You see how nice and green it is in the Mau. Yeah, yeah. Very nice and green, especially at this time of the year when it's raining in some parts of the country. And those rains are critical to production. They make the trees green, yes, but they also make the plants critical, very green also. But this year we haven't had a very good luck with the rains. If you look at the reports of the Kenya Food Security, they say the long rain season, this year's long rains, failed, and as a result, right now many parts of the country are harvesting. They project that the maize harvest this year will be 25% less than it was last year. How do you see that affecting our food basket?
That would be a very data-rich conversation. So we'll really need to have a conversation around what is the projection of what is being harvested. But again, as I said, from where I sit, it doesn't change a lot. Whether we have enough production or less production, for majority of Kenyans, it doesn't change a lot. And you see, with shrinking land sizes, with more people moving from rural areas to urban areas, access to food is now becoming predominantly through purchase. So you find even people living in the rural areas, they buy now, on average, around 40% to 60% of the food they eat. So access to food is increasingly becoming through, enabled through purchase.
Purchase, yes.
Yes. And so how do we ensure then that people are able to afford the food that is in the market?
Actually, the same report says that within the same period, from the time the long rain season started to the time they stopped to date, actually, in many parts of the country, the food prices have risen by up to 40%.
Yeah.
So, particularly in the arid areas.
Yeah, and sometimes when you look at these justifications for a rise in prices, for example, the price of unga has always been increasing. When someone blows a whistle and says, "Guys, there is no maize in the stores," and at the time the price of unga is going up, the millers are not buying from farmers.
Yes.
And they've already bought from farmers at 2,000 shillings, 2,200 shillings, given by government at subsidized rates. And when someone says that because there is a projected deficit in maize in the next harvest season, and the price of unga start going up now, then we need to ask ourselves, which system are we operating? Because you see, if we have a lower production this year, then we must surely see the impact next year, not today. So we can't start seeing an impact in January and people say because the rains have delayed, now the price of unga is going to 120.
Yes.
How?
Because you should not be using that season's.
Exactly.
You should be using the previous
so someone is playing with the system.
Yes.
And farmers last year paid a lot in terms of the cost of the unga. Because how much were they getting, for example?
2,800.
Yes. If you do the maths and how much it costs to actually mill, it's not fair for someone to be raising a price of unga at this time of the year. Something is missing somewhere. Someone is not saying the truth somewhere. And that is why we need to have Kenyans asking these questions.
And we saw that back and forth between the CS and the chair of the Strategic Food Reserve. With the CS on one hand saying, the ministry saying we need to import about 12 million bags, and the Strategic Reserve says, no, our analysis says we only need 2 million bags. And eventually they reached a truce, by the way, and the government said, I don't think we need to import, we're already getting grain from Uganda and Tanzania. Dr. Jama, the food prices in the IGAD region, how are they, what are the dynamics that inform the pricing of food within the region, besides just Kenya?
Zainab, I think it's the supply and the demand issues that determine prices. Obviously, you need the enabling environment of the markets to operate independently from influence from other factors. But we have the East African Grain Council. We have this information of IGAD facilitates, information sharing, trying to see whether this food, which country has a surplus, which country has a deficit, and try, this African trade that is signed now in Niamey. IGAD has also a policy on informal trade issues. So really the way our countries were operating was, it's sometimes easier to get maize from outside rather than from, because of the complications of cross-border. But I'm sure the East African community is better coordinated than the rest of the other countries. So I really the farmers need to get a fair price for their otherwise, I worked in countries where farmers put resources and produced a lot of food, but they could not find a market, or the price in the market was so low that that they really. And then what's the impact of that? The next year, a person who did that, the next year it takes them some time to regroup. He may not, or she may not be able to plant the next
year. I need you to hold that thought just for a moment. We need to go back to the Mao again. And I understand we have Zainab Ismail back online. And wow, look at that. So nice and green, Zainab. What have you been able to establish so far? Is that land part of the Mao, or is that just farmland?
Zainab, what I can tell you at this point, volume.
Oh, the connection is so bad. I think we've lost again. Yeah, we've lost again. We'll go back and, with the thing with the Mao is that all that looks nice like farmland, yet it was part of the forest land that people took possession of, and that's what the government is trying to do, to clear farmers out of the forest and the communities out of the forest. We'll get back to Zainab once we are able to establish a good connection there. Maybe the problem is because she's so far up above the ground. Sure. That's how we can get her properly. But I'm just looking at the RATIN website. The EAGC website on Regional Agricultural Trade Intelligence Network. It maps out how grains move within the East African region. But this is only the formal market, not the informal borders, the formal market. If you look at how the volumes of beans that have crossed the borders, the graph goes like this. So it peaked around 29th of August at the top of the graph. It peaked around 29th of August when 80 metric tons were imported. And then by August 30th, it had dipped to just a bit above 40 tons. That's the formal border. For maize, it's the same thing. But the thing with maize is that for some countries, people along the border claim that some countries are stopping this food from moving freely within the borders. Last week, there was some concerns raised from the Malaba border, claiming that the KRA officials were stopping the clearing and forwarding guys from clearing maize consignments from Uganda. They wanted no grains imported. As such, restrictions also a factor when it comes to how much food there is within a particular country.
I think he's in a better position to answer that. But what I would say is this: some of this, there's increasing realization that some of these borders, for example, the border between Uganda and Kenya, are actually very cosmetic. There's a lot of movement in and out, and you remember even during census, some guys said, if you don't want us to drink in Kenya, we are going to drink in Uganda, and then you will never even find us. So you'd rather allow us to drink in Kenya, and then you find us in the house. So because people move, and these are communities. There is no Kenyan and Ugandan in Busia. These are people who intermarry. These are people who connect, and things move along the border. Even when we had the rise in price of fuel, you had people moving fuel from Uganda into the Kenyan towns along the border. The same thing is happening in Tanzania. So when we increased the VAT on pesticides and agricultural chemicals, farmers are now getting pesticides from Tanzania. Even some pesticides that are not registered in Kenya,
Yes.
they're getting them from Tanzania, sneaking
That's
them
even
in.
how some seeds are coming into, the country.
Yes, and it's because these people don't recognize those borders. It's, you know, the borders are recognized by the governments, but
Yes.
the people don't recognize those borders, because when they see something on the other side, they want to get it. When you know that maize is cheap in Uganda, you want to get it. And as long as we have build resilient within our country, we are able to encourage farmers to use production methods that can allow them to produce efficiently, to increase productivity, and therefore ensuring that the cost of production is much lower or is comparatively competitive compared to the neighbors. Then we will not have a lot of this movement.
Yes.
Because the reason why someone is going to get maize from Uganda is because the price there is cheap.
It's better, yes.
It's better, and the reason
cost
why
of production is also lower.
the cost of production is low, because these farmers are not even, most of them are not even using some of these, you know, DAPs here and this fertilizer. And the cost of fertilizer per bag of maize, remember, is about 750 shillings. That is how much farmers who are growing maize under large-scale, you know, industrial production models, especially in the North Rift, the large trucks, that is how much they pay to produce one bag of maize for fertilizer alone.
Okay.
Yes.